Had it all perfectly set up. Hey guys, welcome to Layman's Terms Podcast, the place where we talk about really big topics using the smallest words possible. I'm Danny the bartender.
And I'm Tommy the trash man.
And together we're just two guys trying to explain the ever-changing world around us the only way that we know how. And today our big topic is revisiting your 20-year-old self. This topic Tommy brought to my attention the other day, so I guess I'm just going to kind of put this on Tommy. But you're imagining that you can have, somehow have the opportunity to talk to your 20-year-old self. Now, I don't know how old you may be, but we're basically 40 and 39 years old. So we're going back 20 years, and it's kind of like, what would we say to our former selves?
Yeah. So a buddy of mine texted me. He was mentioning that he just listened to the last podcast. And he was like, oh, this may be something you guys could talk about. And I don't really like to revisit the past too much, but it is a pretty cool concept. Like what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? And it's like you said, it's fucking 20 years ago for me. So it's a little difficult to even remember who the hell I was at that point. Yeah. I know I was definitely a lot different. I can tell you that. I started thinking about it and I was like, you know what? Probably the best thing that I could have told myself would have been to pick up a fucking tool. And
100%.
And by that, at that time, the line of thinking was still that you have to go to college to get a good job. And, I did the whole, community college thing. But I was never really sure exactly what it is that I want to do. So like, I really didn't have much direction. I was just in college and taking just basic general liberal arts. And just like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really, school for me was always just something you kind of had to do. It was not something I really enjoyed. I don't really know that a lot of people enjoyed school, but.
Well, I guess if you find something you like, you enjoy it.
Exactly. And I just never found really anything, with the exception of occasional classes, like psychology classes or, a marketing class or something like that, But I think growing up, my father was excellent with his hands because of kind of the relationships that I had with him. And I kind of associate my dad, he had his issues. It didn't seem like it was very, like he was making a great living for himself. I mean, he was, but the way he dressed, the way he looked, his van, you would never know that he did all right for himself.
Well, I think another thing to add maybe to that too is I feel that for some reason, especially when you feel you're a creative person, which is something I think me and you might have struggled with, which is a little different than what other people that are content with like an accounting degree might not struggle with. And it's like, even if that dude was even if somebody said, yo, man, you can make a lot of money doing this or that, I looked at those type of things as like selling out or something. Not selling out, but giving up.
No, absolutely. Unfortunately for people like you and I, that's a tough road because I feel like it's a tough balance because internally you feel like you are not on the right path. Like you are just not, something is not going right. And I kind of struggled, I had some jobs in like out of high school and I was making decent money, but it's like, it's almost like you're in a daze. You know what I mean? You're going to work, you're in a fog. You're just not present in the moment. There's never
also work. Like I feel like if you are in accounting, if you've got a degree as an accountant and you've got a job as a low level employee at an accounting firm, every day you go to work is another step closer to your goal. When you just take a fucking random job, every day, it's only that paycheck that you're like, okay, after I'm done work this week, like maybe I can figure out what I want to do with myself or whatever else. And so every time, that's how I feel anyway, is like, work becomes just about money and not about goals. And, work is just something you do till you figure something out. And that leaves you lost.
Yeah. Listen, that works out well for certain people. You know what I mean? Certain people have that Rain Man type mind that numbers it just works.
But I mean, not even numbers. Like, I mean,
Mm.
you're a trash guy, right? So,
Yes.
so like if your goals were like, I want to position, like, I think some people's goals are just like, I want to position myself to have enough money to make a family. Sometimes the job itself, they have, I feel that people that are more content with their job, their goals are like my 401k and my retirement plan and my family. You know what I mean? And so therefore it's not like if somebody shows up to work every day as a trash man and they're trying to be the driver and then they're trying to be the manager and then they're trying to be the regional, dispatcher or whatever, like every day to work is another step towards their goal. Whereas in my job, it's like if I started to move up the ladder in my job, I get more depressed. Like, oh great, now I'm the fucking manager of a restaurant.
Yeah, and it's something I was actually talking about with a guy at work. When you're talking about that, I mean, this guy, he's been working with us for 35 years or so, and now he's just basically the truck driver. And I think he's one of those guys, like a very simple guy, like really, really intelligent guy, like strangely intelligent, like one of those guys that like turns on Jeopardy and like fucking knows all the answers.
Yeah, and then you're like, why are you a trash man?
Exactly. But he's just like I said, he's a hard worker, super simple, and I think he raised 2 kids, he was married, he's got his mortgage paid off, he's got this pension coming up, when he retires in a few years, and his 401k. And I think, we just had a grandson, and I think it's basically for him, that's what life is, being a hard worker, maybe doing some things on the side, whatever, and providing for your family and just living. I never see this guy really having a bad day. Whereas like I go into my job every day and I'm a fucking miserable prick. But it's a strange balance too though, because I get to the point where I think I'm better than what I do, but then in the same sense, I'm like, is that my ego getting in the way? Like, am I really better than this? I mean, because it's a good job. It has its perks. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
there's a
but
lot of people that would really, really appreciate what I do. This is where I think internally, like you were mentioning about the artistic people, that it's tough for me to accept because I almost feel I feel like I am just not on the path that I'm supposed to be on. So I
well,
struggle with that.
well, put it this way. I remember something I was watching or something or whatever, where they explained that kings of, like the king of England or something, if their firstborn son, who is supposed to be the heir to the throne, showed signs of creativity, they would pass over them and sometimes even like kill them. Like, in other words, a creative mind can cause disruption, like in the sense of trying new, like let's just say during a battle that your son decides to try a new way because he's creative, where
Right.
it's like stick to the fucking game plan. But I use that as an example though, just to say that creativity has, of course, its ups, but it has its downs. And if you're creative, and you're put in a job where you're not using that creative side of yourself, I think it really can drive you crazy, drive you to like depression. And because I feel when you said, is this my ego telling me I'm saying I'm too good for this job, et cetera. I don't think it's about that. I think what it is I think that you're saying to yourself, I'm too good for this job. But I think what you're really saying to yourself is, I'm not doing what I want to do. I'm not doing it. Like, in other words, if you were to be, for me, if I was to be taking the trash out on a movie studio, that would at least be a step in a direction. Every day I go to work, I would see certain things that I love to see or whatever. And so it's something we'll get into later that I was thinking about what it means to, or what I would do if I could change something. But I guess, I don't think it's ego that's telling you that you shouldn't, man, why am I doing this? And I know that feeling, because then you look at the next person like, am I saying I'm better than this person? And no, you're just not supposed to be there. And I think that part of the struggle of getting older is that you never follow when you're creative or when you have these different things. Like for you, I just always think music. Like when you're saying I should have learned a tool, I don't think you should have learned how to like swing a hammer. I think you should have learned how to mix audio. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think your tool would have been like media equipment and stuff, like audio
Yeah.
equipment, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you would have always followed that part of your desire and kept just the thought of, when you're creative, people put these things in your head like, dude, you gotta stop worrying about this, and you gotta go get a job, and you gotta do this and that. And I used to look at people like, look at this guy. He's fucking like just traveling around, only has a job every 3 months. Every once in a while, he gets a PA on a movie set. How can you live like that? And I would live like that if I could go back in time, because I'm sure that those people aren't just unemployed getting PA set jobs once in a while. I'm sure after 10 years of doing that, something culminated for them. I wish I could go back in time and just follow my gut instinct and my desire, and not put money and what I was supposed to be doing, quote unquote, in the forefront. I would have just kept what I wanted to do in the forefront. Like, I don't care that I'm not going to make enough money. I don't care that I might not know if I'm going to have a job for too long, or if I'm going to be able to live in the kind of way I want to live. It's more about the goal and the end game of being surrounded by things you like.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I actually agree with what you said. I guess I also struggle with, because you start to see your buddies graduate college, and you start to see them getting jobs and well-paying jobs, and it's frustrating to see that. Not that you're not happy for them, because like all of my buddies that are doing really well for themselves, I'm super proud of them. It's just, I wish that I had that in me. Like, there's a part of me that, with the creativity thing, it's kind of a gift and a curse, because it's much harder to find success in that avenue, or that route that you go, whether it's movies or music or art, theater, whatever the case. It's so much harder to really make it and thrive in that world. Whereas somebody that goes and becomes the accountant or just HR guy, you know what I mean?
But I know we're not in disagreement. I'm not like, I'm adding something to your thought though, where my thought has changed. See, when I was a kid, and you say things to people like, I want to be an actor, or you say things to people like, I want to be a director, right? Let's just say you, like, that's the two things I wanted to be. I wanted to make my own movies, and I wanted to act. And what made it so hard to envision was, go ahead and say that to somebody, and they go, oh God, what do you think you're going to be, fucking Matt Damon?
Right.
Or, oh, we got the next Steven Spielberg on our hands.
Right.
Well, if I said to somebody, I wanted to be an accountant, do they say, oh, here we go, guy thinks he's going to be fucking, and then name some major player in business? Like, if I said like, well, one day I want to open up my own business, nobody goes like, oh, here we go. Somebody thinks he's fucking Ford. No, so I guess what I'm saying is, you can make $19 an hour, probably way more, holding a boom mic. I feel like creative, when you mention creative things, like if you said, I want to make my own app, or I want to, start my own software company, which are, those are dreams that are based in some type of thing where somebody's already making money. So I guess in one way, they are still grounded thoughts, but I'm just trying to think of like the major ones. Like, I want to be a musician. I want to be an actor. I want to be a director. I want to make music. I want to produce beats. Like, those kind of dreams, they're always counteracted by people around you who aren't creative, who say things like, dude, you'll never make it, type of shit. And so if I could talk to my former self, I would reevaluate what it means to make it, because I always wanted to play guitar, but I never put the time in. And I see these people that are like, you would almost think they're failed musicians because they're just playing in a bar. Well, they're playing in a bar, an acoustic set on a Friday night, making $300 a night. Right. I mean, right. And then the other thing that I think I have a problem with is, when you were talking about yourself, you were saying like, I see my friends around me getting good jobs. I mean, dude, I won't talk about my money, whatever, but let's just say I make more money than a lot of people I know. A lot of very professional people. Not now, I don't, but I have pretty much. That was my biggest thing that was so hard because, I mean, I like when I first got into this business. I mean, I was making $1,000 a week cash when people were making $30,000 a year entry level jobs.
Right.
And so it started to become this weird world of I wanted to go out and kind of like, I wanted to go out and kind of pursue some other things, but man, I'm making good money as a 19-year-old dude. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to throw this away. And I always tried to find a way to make it work. But the bottom line is you're going to have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice. You just have to. You have to sacrifice the now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a tough balance. And you know what? That's also one of the reasons for me with sticking to my job is because it's always given me opportunities to pursue other things because of the hours, because of my scheduling. I was able to get involved in theater. And that's another thing I would probably tell my 20-year-old self to do is get involved in theater. That's another thing that, you know, kind of has like this stigma, you know, especially growing up when we grow up, you know what I mean? Like if like I would never be like, you know, I'm gonna do theater. Like people be like, you fucking dork, like you theater geek. You know
Tom,
what I mean?
You know what I'll say to you though? I've brought that up to some people, and that shows you how different I want to say our neighborhood was. But I think I also thought that where we grew up and how we grew up was pretty much the norm for I thought like it was us and then like upper middle class, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Right.
And the more I talk to people about the way that because the example I always use is I used to always think that I was somebody who didn't respond to peer pressure. Like I like to think of myself as this guy who always kind of did what I wanted to do. Right.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I hid away in a closet and said, I'm not going to tell anybody I want to learn how to play the guitar. But when I thought of the guy that played guitar, I pictured the guy carrying his guitar onto the public school bus or whatever and getting harassed and then most likely possibly getting chased home just to break his guitar or something.
Right. Right.
And it's not like I'm saying that I went, oh my God, I won't do that. But I looked like, I guess that's for pussies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And theater the same. Like if you were in the theater, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there were a few people who would like join the school plays or whatever. And it was like all the, like, I mean, not, you know, we'd say like, oh, you're gay or you're whatever. And like,
oh yeah.
And I do feel it was a different kind of gay that we were saying then, but still it was like, you know, that person received such ridicule for doing that. And so I guess where I'm going with this is when I talk to other people and I start kind of saying like, well, I never wanted to do theater because, and I'm talking to like a dude who's like, was a football star. And he's like, oh, I was in theater when I was in high school. And I'm like, oh, and I come at him with that thought, like, oh, really? What was that like for you? You know, must've been horrible.
Right.
And he's like, nah, that's what all the fucking cool kids did. Like I joined drama because all my friends did it because we had so much fun. I'm like, wait, this is not the fucking what I grew up with. And I thought in the first time I heard it, second time I heard it, I thought maybe it's just ironic or it's just a coincidence or it was a different neighborhood. But like, I'm assuming that like, that's that little like fucking fear that every fucking person has in those neighborhoods where they feel like fucking they're worthless people. And you know what I mean? Their family lives are fucked up and all. And it's like, oh, there goes somebody doing something good for himself. Let's fucking get him, you know? Let's take that guy down.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and it wasn't until I don't know, I guess I was 34 maybe when finally somebody a friend of mine that I knew that was involved, he went to college for film. And he was involved in theater for years in high school and all that. And he would always tell me, and I was just like, whatever. And when I got involved in it, man, it really changed my life in a very good way. You know, it really opened me up a little bit more, made me feel a little bit more confident about myself. And, you know, it's something that I wish I had pursued. But it's also that's a strange thing too, because like you said, when you think about me, I think a lot of people probably associated me with music. You know, that probably would have been what I would have ventured into. So theater wasn't ever really something on my radar, to be honest with you. Like I didn't want to be, like you said, you want to be an actor. I always wanted, like I always had this thought of doing like movies, but I always kind of thought of myself as like the guy behind the scenes, like the director or the producer. I never really thought of myself, with the
Yeah.
limelight on me.
Well, honestly, too, though, and what I actually, and I guess when you were saying Tool, I guess that's why I went music. But I always do associate you with music because you did like music. You know what I mean? But what I think that we're saying kind of the same thing too is I didn't really want to be an actor. Like I never saw myself. I used to, and first off, when we talk about theater and film acting, I used to actually think, no, I don't. Look, if I said to somebody, they'd be like, "You want to be an actor?" I'd be like, "No, well, in film," because I always looked at it like theater acting was like for people who were ready to they wanted to give themselves completely 100% to the art.
Right.
And for me, I always when there wasn't really there's no term for somebody who's like, well, I'd like to make a movie, but I'd also like to maybe be in a movie a little bit and also maybe like do cool little fucking things like little sketches once in a while and whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like in other words, it was more of a rounded thought. And that's kind of what I mean about being in that world. Like if you would have pursued music and then next thing you know, you're doing music for say someone's music video and then you start going and that's what I mean about being in that world. Like if you look over and go, man, like I feel like my world was like I would look at something and go, God, I'd love to learn about that. And then you go out with your friends and you're like, hey, I mean, we made movies like I don't know if you remember, but like me and Paul made a movie and shit, right? And
Yeah.
it was fucking great. My fucking brother filmed over it. I want to kill him still to this day. But so what I always thought though was like a lot of times when I think like, man, I wasn't trying to pursue my dreams. Like, dude, I gathered everybody up to make a movie and everybody was on board. I was like, yo, let's come to my house. We'll make a movie. Well, whatever. And then when we got there, everybody was like, oh no, I don't want to be in it. And I'm like, well, what the fuck do you want to do? And then it was like Paul Mackey. I don't know if you remember the funny part about it was that at one point we filmed Kevin Smith as like 3 different people because nobody else wanted to be in it.
Right.
And that's what made it funny was that we found these different ways to make like him fight himself and stuff. But I guess what I'm saying is I always felt like all of my dreams and goals and stuff, when I would have that spark of like, man, I'd like to do this, you weren't surrounded by people with that same thought. Like if you wanted to go to Emerson University and go for some kind of degree, you might find like 4 or 5 kids in your neighborhood who are your real good friends who are like, dude, that's what we'll do. We'll go to this college together. Like, even if you're pursuing something different. But I felt like every time I wanted to do something, it was like, and I'm not putting it on anyone else. I mean, there would have been ways to do it, but those ways would have been to really step out of my world. Like those ways would have been like, I'm going to start I went to Walnut Street Theater School. I felt so weird. Like I always felt like, dude, I always felt like I didn't belong there, not because of my skills, but it was weird. Like imagine you show up to Walnut Street Theater School as a 14-year-old kid and first off, it's all girls. Like the dude would even say in the beginning of the class, he's like, notice there's only 2 guys and there's 15 girls, which sounds great, right? But he's like, you'll also notice that most guys won't get into this until later because of the stigma of it.
Right.
But then on top of that, everybody also kind of seemed to come from money.
Right.
So like the first question they would always ask me anything I did when I was a kid, and they really asked this question, like significantly asked the question, do you want to be here or does your parents want you to be here? And
Yeah.
you would like in that one Walnut Street Theater School class, I asked like 5 out of the fucking 15 people that were in it were like, my mom wants me to be here more than I want to be here. And I guess like it was a weird world for me too, because you see like everybody hanging out and then like their mom's picking them up and they're driving in a nice car away. And like, I'm leaving and getting on the fucking L and having some guy ask me for fucking money, and it just, you feel like alone. You're like, wow, man. And in most cases, what I'll say that I also did, that was I guess a weak part of it was, you're showing up every day and it's one thing to kind of step out of your box. And it's another thing to be completely alone, fighting off that monster in your head. Like, dude, just get back on the fucking train and get the fuck out of here. This is horrible. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I went to like fucking 12 weeks of a 14-week Walnut 3 Street Theater School. And then I just fucking rolled out. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't want to do it anymore. And not because I wasn't enjoying myself, but it's like when you're running, when you're a jogger or when you're trying to work out and there's something in your brain going, dude, why don't you just stop? You come back and do this tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's like no support around you because you go home and your friends are like, ah, look, he wasn't here last night because he was in acting class, you know, and you're like, I would rather just stay the fuck home at this point.
Yeah. Well, and at that age, it's much harder because you're trying to find your way in everything. You know what I'm saying? So like the teacher was saying, as they get older, I feel like for men in particular, it gets a little bit easier. Um, but I know exactly what you mean because when after the first show that I did, like that first show I did, they were already kind of in production and they had some people that I guess kind of had to drop out and it was like a small role. Um, and then it wasn't until maybe like the third show that I was in that I really started to feel like, am I really like a part of this? You know what I'm saying? Like, do I belong here? Because there was people that were doing it for so many years that was just like that was their world. And there were people that, I didn't know techniques. I didn't know really how to prepare. There were so many things that goes into all of this that like it was so new to me. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And the first show I did, actually, a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, he started at the same time as I did, a couple years younger, and he was a natural, very, very good, very, very talented actor. And it kind of like this goes to back to my personality. Like if I don't get something right away, I kind of get like turned off by it. Like I don't really want to put in the work. And that's also goes back to something I would tell my 20-year-old self, like, dude, you really got to work at things because all throughout school, all throughout everything in all aspects of my life, even like in high school and certain topics, I like math. I was horrible at math. And then maybe we'd start learning something in history and boom, I was off to the races and got, an A's, B's on papers. So if things didn't come natural to me, like I just felt like, okay, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. So like I got to back away from this. And I really ran into that problem with the theater. And it wasn't until maybe like the third or fourth thing I was doing. And I became friends with this girl that I did a show with. And she kept encouraging me. She's like, look, you do have some talent. Like, and I got cast in a new show and it was with my buddy who was really, really good. So that was also intimidating. And it was the first time I had a lot of lines. It wasn't a full show. It was just like a 15-minute skit. But it was the first time I had like a significant amount of lines. And I was like, I can't do this. So my initial reaction was to just be like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. I gotta drop out of this. And she kept pushing me and she kept saying like, you can do this. She helped me with a few different things. And then it was after that show, one of the next bigger shows that I did at the mansion called the Manor. And that was a very big role. It was because of that friend that helped push me and the confidence that I gained after that I was able to do this next show. Because I got to be honest with you, that script was even bigger and it was a really intense role. And internally, when I was sitting in my apartment looking over those lines and I'm like, I can't get this, every part of me wanted to shut down and quit. And that's something I've always battled with, but it's weird now because I'm also a hustler. Like I'm always working like 2-3 jobs. Like I don't mind working and putting in work to gain something. But when it comes to like, I guess they're very simple jobs. So when it comes to me and being creative and really stepping outside of my comfort zone, it gets really tough. And it's like everything in me wants to just shut down.
Yeah. And then the people that are around you, most of my friends, but well, I have a different kind of fear of it in a weird way where I have this thing where it's like, I always like stand-up comedy and stuff like that. And there's certain things that like I do. Like I show up to work and I kind of have a fucking routine and I kind of do my little, I guess you'd call them bits, and shit when I'm at work. And so what happens is like people don't understand that I have that fear. So if they go like, dude, you should go up there. And I'm like, no, I'm not going up there with no material, no nothing. And this goes back to what I meant with all the friends being like, let's film a video. And then what always happened to me in my life was then you're standing there like it's just you and a camera on you. And they're like, do something. And you're like, what the fuck? And then it goes, like, in other words, I always felt, and maybe it's not true, but I'm just to kind of give an example of where I'm going is I always felt like if I stand up and go and try and do some stand up, if it's mediocre, I'm going to get obliterated by people I know, even if it's behind my back type of stuff, because it's this thing of like, oh yeah, Dan went up there and he's not there. Now and the reason why I'm saying that would bother me is I just recently went and watched one of my friends do stand up who never did it and shouldn't do it. I love him to death, but he still shouldn't do it.
Right.
But because he went in with that type of fucking, everybody's like, oh my God, why is he doing this? Like the mere fact that he stood up there for fucking 5 minutes and was okay. It was like, hey man, great fucking job. You know what I mean? And then people are looking at me like, oh, you're going to crush it, And I know I'm not going to crush it, but I also know that doesn't mean I'm going to fail if I keep going at it. But that's one of my biggest fears of like getting up on stage there. But I also feel that a lot of people around me who are not, they don't even really understand what it takes to be in any of those worlds that we kind of talked about. They just always assume if I sat there and I'm like, dude, I'm a little nervous about like going to this class or whatever. They look at me like, why? What are you nervous about? Blah, blah. And it's like, I'm not like, I don't know what they think I am, but like, I mean, fucking, there's a lot more that goes into this world and a lot more preparation and a lot more whatever. You can't just be somewhat of a funny guy and just fucking take over the world. You know what I mean? And so, that's a little sidetrack off the bigger picture. But when you were saying that thing about like things coming natural to you, you said like you would go to school and you'd take a math test and then all of a sudden you'd put it aside because history's working out for you and you put math behind. And I actually think that theater comes more naturally to you than you think. For you, like I'm actually speaking for you in what you said, because you can't go up there and be great without any work. But I think no matter what you do, that fear that you develop inside you, as much as it's a scary thing, think about the other way. What if you were there and you were like, I got this, man. I got this. You're probably going to fail. I think it was Kobe Bryant. It's a saying that I saw when Kobe Bryant passed away. And they said something like, if you are afraid to fail or something, or not afraid to fail, or you don't think you're going to fail or something, you're probably going to fail.
Right.
And I think that like anytime I've ever like fucking sat here, because when I started to go to film school, that's where shit really got weird, because it's one thing like another thing where people dismiss stuff. Like when I tell people I went to film school, they're like, oh, like as if that means I wasn't educated. Like, first off, I took all the same shit everybody else did until I got into my major fully. So I guess why I brought it back to here is when you were saying that thing about like history got me, but math didn't. Who the fuck is going to tell you that you have to take math then? Like there is a point where if you just keep going forward and you get that behind you, like one of the reasons why I don't have an actual degree is because I still haven't taken my math course. Okay. Right. It's like what started to happen when I went to college was the more you went, the more choice you had and the better the experience became. You took your one class. Now you can move into fucking film. You know what I mean? Now you can move into whatever. And so I think that that's how you should have led your life more. Like, for speaking for myself now, is like don't fucking, like, I had people telling me like what I had to do, and it was all about getting into college, getting a good job. No one gave a fuck that I wanted to be a filmmaker. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that I should have put more effort into just following that, like you said, what comes natural to you. Now, making like every time you take on a new venture in your subject, you're going to have a separate fear. But the thing is keep going in that direction though. It's okay that you don't like math. It's okay that you're not good at it. That's fine. But if you are really good at history and you enjoy it, where does that take you now? And follow that, and don't be afraid. Because like I said, I mean, I feel like I don't know any statistics, but I would imagine less people consider themselves to be creative in the full sense than most people. So I don't know what it would be, but let's say out of 10 people, you got 4 of them that are creative. Well, they're the minority. So when they're looking for their advice on like, how should I pick a college? How should I pick a career? Most probably you're talking to somebody who's like got a dream of being like a big figurehead in a company or something.
Right.
And so if I really loved film school, like personally what happened was when I started to learn film, but here's the other problem for people that are creative. College isn't a way to, you don't get out of college like got a film degree and I got a 98 in my fucking film test. So now Steven Spielberg has to hire me. Or
Right.
I did theater and I got a great grade. So now I'm definitely going to get on Broadway. And so I think that the other thing that kind of makes it weird about like, this is kind of what I would tell myself is you just have to do it. Like no degree that you get at age 35 is going to make up for, well, I started fucking carrying equipment for fucking some director that worked at a PBS. You just have to do it, you know? And I mean, maybe I got a little sidetracked, but I think the main thing I was getting at is that actually, I think that fear though, the fear that you start to get before a big show or before, I would be like writing a speech and I'd be like, oh my God, this is going to be, I'm so nervous. But as long as I think if you have that, it's good. It's that for me, it's that 5 minutes when you're outside where you're like, I could just fucking leave. Nobody here. And I think, again, when you're in that world, like if like, put it this way, just to kind of make a weird example. If you were standing in school and you had to leave school, like in the, like at the end of the day, and there was somebody outside, like, we're going to fucking beat your ass. And then you're in your neighborhood and your friends are looking at you like, yo, man, so-and-so wants to whip your ass when you get out of here. You're shitting your fucking pants. But you're like, I'm going to be seeing these people for a long time. And so, and then you might only have one kid who's like, dude, fuck that dude. I'm standing beside you. And you're going to fucking, even if you lose, so what? You stand up for yourself or whatever. So you walk out. You don't go fucking run to the principal. You don't fucking call your mom. You don't stay in the fucking school until somebody comes and picks you up. You go and you take whatever comes to you. Now, when you're the only person that wants to do theater and tonight's the big show and you're standing in that back room about to go through the door, you don't have any fucking friends going like, you got this, man. You got this. You fucking got this. And you also know that if you just turn around and leave, maybe one day at work, some dude that you pass by once in a while might go like, dude, where'd you go the other night? And so I guess what I'm getting at is that's where support is important too, because it also gives you something you have to face. Like if I make this decision, then I have to face a different problem. So it's easy to walk away when there's no fucking, like if I was to quit fucking, like I did, I quit Walnut Street Theater School. You think when I showed up to back on at Finnegan's Playground or some shit to fucking play basketball, you think that anybody gave a fuck? You know what I mean? Like They didn't even know. They didn't even care. I thought you go to that theater thing. Nah, I don't go anymore. Oh, good. Fucking, you know what I mean? They make fun of me for 5 minutes or something. If all of our friends were theater lovers and you were to turn around and I imagine in that world, because I've met some people in different kinds of worlds where I would come at them with the same thing, like, I got scared, whatever. And like you end up having somebody go like, dude, what are you fucking scared about, man? There's nothing to fucking worry about. And then next time I'll go with you and don't give up and whatever. When you have somebody talking to you like that, it goes somewhere. It takes you to a place that you get stronger.
Right.
And I definitely didn't have that in my life. Like if I was to come home, if I was to fucking, tell my mom tomorrow, like, well, I stopped going to school for film and I figured I would just go for my, whatever class. And my goal is to just get a job at the post office. My mom will be like, good. I'm glad. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to be like, fuck you, get out that door and go for it.
Right.
And that's the one thing. And I think I mentioned it in one of our podcasts where I said, like, when people say like, he never had anybody to nurture, I think it's nurture his potential or something like that. And you see, when you look at other people who say things like, I had my uncle in my life and he really like actually nurtured my potential, where you see this kind of conversation more is athletes. Yeah. It's like he lived in the worst fucking projects in the worst city in the United States, but he was good at baseball, and his uncle was also good at baseball and was out and in and out of jail, but also reformed his life. And he came in and he just put all kinds of support behind this dude's baseball athletic ability. Well, in my world, if your uncle was to step in because, you were this fucking lost kid, it was always about getting on track, going to school, doing your homework. Nobody ever came in and said, yo, your kid likes theater. Let's get him a movie. Let's get him a camera. Let's get him some lessons. It was never that. Anytime I ventured into that world, it was like, I mean, maybe it's because we came from a poor place where you don't walk around with a fucking camera. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody had a camcorder and shit. I mean, maybe things would be different now. Who knows? But I still think that it isn't just having the equipment. It's more like to have someone. And you tell me right now, name somebody. If you wanted to help in theater and you're looking around that neighborhood we grew up, you got any ideas of who could have fucking guided you? No, right?
No.
Now, if you wanted to sell drugs, could you find somebody to guide you in that direction?
No, yeah.
And I think that's kind of irrelevant, the drugs part, but I'm just kind of using an example of there really wasn't I don't know if there is now. I don't know how it works now. I don't want to say just because everybody has an iPhone that my life would have been different. What I do know is there was no fucking guide. There was when it comes to creative arts of any kind, I don't remember too many fucking people being a fucking a good mentor to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember in high school. I don't remember us even having like a theater department or anything really like that.
No. Tom, when I went to go to film school, because you were saying something about when you were going to college and stuff, you were just kind of just taking classes. The worst part for me was I did try to go to school a couple times young. And what happened was, if you wanted to go to film school when I was 19 years old, if you wanted to go to film school, they would say, like, it was even weird the way that there was really no film school, because you could go to UCLA or you could go to NYU. And then there was like 3 other schools that had some kind of film program. But what would happen is I remember going to Philly Community and I'm like, I want to take film. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we have an advanced arts. And what happened was you go into this program where like you would take some photography, you could take theater, you could take whatever, but there was no film program. It just didn't exist. Now there's more. So that's when I went back to school later, I ended up going to community college first. I had a really good film program. Next thing you know, you're working with film equipment, you're meeting people, you're like, my first day in film school, I'm fucking 34 years old. I'm there with like an 18-year-old kid, and they put you in a group with 2 other kids and they're like, all right, get together and make a movie. Like, imagine that. You're sitting there with some fucking kid picking his nose and you're like, hey, But you know what I really loved about film school was, once I made my first film, going into that group, it was like my ideas were dismissed because, I'd be like, well, maybe we could do this. And they're like, maybe, and I got real lucky because I happened to be with 2 kids who were like shunning all my ideas, one idea, for example, the kid had that like I had to kind of take his ideas down like slowly without like being a dick. And one of his ideas was, which was kind of a good idea. He's like, but I'll never forget his idea. Now remember, you're doing a project for school, and it's a small project. And this kid's like, yo, what if we have a thing where a guy's running and he keeps running and people keep joining him, and at the end you find out that he wasn't running from anything and people were just following him. And I'm like, okay. So he started like telling his example, and by the time he was done running, he had like 100 people behind him. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not knocking your idea, but I can't even get Wednesday off. How the fuck are we going to get 100 fucking extras, you know?
Right.
So anyway, I was afraid to share more of like, I was kind of ready to just ride with these kids, whatever they wanted. And what ended up happening was they didn't do their shit. They didn't do nothing. So on the night before, they're like, oh, we got to hand in our script. And then they weren't even like answering me. So I just wrote a script myself. And then once that script went through, that's the movie we're making. So I saved their ass because they didn't do any work. So then they did the script that I made. And then when we were done, everybody loved it. So after everybody loved it, the next time I got in a group, instead of me sitting there and going like, what do you guys want to do? They just looked at me like, what are you going to do? What's next? You know?
Right.
And it's really weird to say, but it was like the first time in my life I started to get that gold star feeling, you know, like the thing where the teacher, where I was also going with this was when people make fun of you for going to like film school. And I always say to them, you know, when you write that fucking paper that, you didn't really put your shit together at the end, but you just hand it in and you get the 80 and they write at the bottom, seems like you kind of made up the last paragraph there, but you're happy with your 80. Yeah. Try that in a film where you're in your 10-person class, but for your exam, you got to put your film up in front of 300 people in the auditorium. And then part of their grade is they get asked a question like, what do you think maybe Daniel could have done better or maybe didn't do? And literally it's part of their grade to like point shit out. And you'll have kids standing up, raising their hand. Like, seems to me like he just kind of fucking didn't have time at the end and just made something up because it didn't make sense. And you got to sit through that bullshit. So I guess what I'm saying is like going into your fear and all that kind of stuff. It's like when you're doing your things for school and shit, that shit's going to be viewed by an audience and it's going to be part of their grade to fucking try and rip it apart. And so, you're fucking sweating it out or whatever. But I started to find that just putting shit up was worse than giving it your all, because what would you rather do? Like be slayed for something you didn't put your all into, or fucking like start to make your film and say, try and fucking take this apart, motherfucker. But so anyway, I guess it's just more about like, once I got into that world. And one of the coolest things I'll just add just to say to you is I actually gave up. And as a matter of fact, it's actually very relevant. It was my first year of film school, and we went away for our fucking week vacation or whatever it is. And some shit happened in my life, probably girlfriend shit, all kinds of dumb shit that you let get to you. And I just didn't go back to school. Didn't go back. But the weird part is I remember I did this once at like an English class, and I came back to school and I was like always fucking falling asleep in the class and shit. When I came back to school, everyone was looking at me like, why did this, like you could see it on their face. This was Delaware County Community. They were like, why is this guy here? Like he failed. And you could just see it. Like, why is this guy here? He's failed. Get out of here. Right. And I think the teacher even called me out. Like they were like, Mr. Bender, any reason why you want to tell me why you're here? How, whatever. And I ended up just like leaving and fucking quitting school. When I went back to the film class, I went in and literally, I'm not kidding, dude. It was the coolest thing ever to have all these little kids, dude. You could hear them being like, oh my God, he's back. Blah, 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 blah. Dude, it was like really cool.
Right.
But it was also still nerve wracking because I didn't know what this meant. I mean, dude, I'd been out of school for like 3 weeks over the 2 week or the week that we were off. And at the end of the class, the teacher was like, Mr. Bender, can I talk to you for a second? She pulled me into like the equipment office. And dude, it was like pretty interesting and fucking cool and bad at the same time. She was like, look, I just want to let you know something, that there's bigger things going on when you go to school than yourself. And she goes, I'm not going to ask you what you did. I'm not going to ask you why you didn't come back to school. I'm not going to ask you none of that. She goes, but I'm just going to tell you, when we came back from break, about 5 kids that were failing in the class actually asked to speak to me and asked me if I could put them in your next project so that they could get their grade up. So she's like, you didn't, you might have your own things going on or whatever else, but she's like, you let down other people in this class. Yeah. And I was like, well, in fairness, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't give a fuck about those kids.
Right.
But I was like, wow. And then the best part was, and then she's like, so for your next thing, you're with she put me in, like, I don't want to say the guy's name or anything, but basically my next project was pretty cut and dry, that I was punished. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say? It was like she looked at me at the end of that conversation and was like, and so now you're with this person. And I was like, oh, great. Thanks a lot. But think about the difference of, like, I didn't belong in English class. And so when I walked into English class, not only did the teacher not want me there, but those fucking kids didn't care if I was fucking there or not either. And so I think that, like, once you get into a world that you like to be in, even though it's going to be hard at times, it's like, it's just so much better to be in that world than to be anywhere else. I would imagine hating your life, but being, you know, oh, I hate my life. I work as a fucking trash guy at the Jimmy Kimmel show, is probably fucking a lot better than hating your life and fucking cleaning the fucking trash at the Hers potato chips or something. So just whatever you do, I think whatever decision you make, if I could go back in time, whatever decision I made, it would always have to be slightly geared towards what I wanted. Maybe not 100%, but just like, oh, I'm going to be the janitor at a theater. Like, at least do that, you know, and then become interested in what other people are doing. Then all of a sudden you see some other guy, you go, what's his job? Oh, he sets up the lights. Oh, and then you see people helping him out. How much you make? $15 an hour. Well, maybe I'll try to get that job. And then just so on and so forth. And, you know, I'm not telling, it sounds like I'm being weak because I'm not telling anybody to take a big fucking dive into something. But I mean, just be in it. I think if you are worth it and you be in it, you'll find your way. You just can't turn around. Like, I can't turn around at my life and say, man, why did nothing ever happen for me? Well, you surrounded yourself with people that are interested in very different things. So that's where you put your efforts. And so, I mean, you know, if you're not putting effort in, you're not going to get anything back.
Yeah. And that's, you know, a few things to add. What I would tell my 20-year-old self is to stay away from a few women during that time. How you mentioned that you probably had some girlfriend problems.
Yeah, just destroyed me.
There was definitely a few of them that I would probably say to stay away from. You know, I also to go on your last thing about being, I guess, in the right group of people. I wish I would have traveled more to experience things, to different lifestyles, meeting new people, because in a lot of ways, once those 20s hit, and once I hit 21 and you start going out to the bar scene for years, for the next, 10 years, I was just caught up in going out with my friends, the same people. I really was never really exposed to anything new. You know what I'm saying? And I think I think it's pretty common. I think a lot of people get caught up in that type of stuff.
Well, I just want, before you continue, I want to ask you one question about what you're saying. Travel just out of state, or maybe just go to or are you talking are you saying you should have traveled? Like, I should have gone to this other exotic country? Or are you talking about just get out of Philly more, period?
Get out of Philly more. And at that age, get out of Philly more. It wasn't until, I didn't get on my first plane until I was 30. So I would, yes, absolutely, now more so than then. Internationally, yeah. But just to experience, I had a buddy who worked fucking all over the place. Who was always traveling for work. And again, I know these things aren't really necessarily common, but even when kids, that go to college and they go away to college, I think is a great move to just kind of expand your group of friends, your experiences. And those are all things that I was I was nervous about doing. I couldn't imagine not having certain people in my life that, they were my cornerstones, like as far as friends.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just wasn't, I guess, confident enough to
Well,
kind of venture out and step away from, the city and, you know.
well, that the one thing that I would tell myself if I could go back, the one thing I wouldn't stop myself from doing, and as you're saying about traveling, you remember you're talking to a guy who jumped in his fucking car in the middle of the night and ended up in fucking Miami. Although the experience there, I didn't get what I think when I was younger, I think I had this thought of like, somebody's going to come and offer me something. Like I am special
Right.
and somebody's going to come offer me something.
Right.
And I got to get the fuck out of Philly, and then I left. I had 4 wonderful years there, none of which were productive. There was nothing good on that side came out of it, except for the fact that maybe some of what you said, I experienced some new things. I definitely left. If I had any type of fucking foundation of friends or whatever, blah, blah, like I definitely was on my own when I went out there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my cousin came with me, but it's different. It's different. I mean, we were in a world of like everything. I mean, I was sleeping in my fucking car for the first month. We were going into fucking, dude, we would go in, me and Nolan would go into fucking supermarkets. He taught me a cool trick. We would find $1 and we'd go into a fucking supermarket and we'd order like pound of roast beef, pound of cheese, pound of whatever. And then you shove all that shit in your pants and you fucking get a loaf of bread. And then you fucking buy the loaf of bread and you leave.
What was the point of the $1?
Because you can buy we would get bread. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, in other words, you didn't just go in and steal and walk out. You went in like a
paid for the bread.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to talk about like stealing or whatever, but I guess what I'm more getting at is when I came back and I used to think like I wasted my years, but actually I was so content because I lived as a teenager with that, man, I got to get the fuck out of here. I got to get the fuck out of here. And I realized like, I'm glad I left because that thought of I have to leave is gone. And what started to happen was this thought of like, you have to do something, like whatever it is that you think you're running from, it's not because of where you're at. So coming back, whenever my brain was like, even now, like sometimes I'm like, man, I gotta get the fuck out of Baltimore or something. And I'm like, no. And they say this in theater. And I mean, well, yeah, I guess it'd be theater too, but like definitely acting. Anytime when you would be in some class where they're, because especially being a kid, they give you guidance. So half of your class was somebody like being a guidance counselor,
Right.
And they would say to you, one thing that always resonated with me is they said, all these people have these things of like, I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to make it. And they would say, well, if you didn't make it in fucking Lancaster, Pennsylvania, then you ain't going to make it. If you can adapt this kind of mindset to anything that you do, it's like a cop out to be like, I got to do this and then I'll get it. Because basically what they would say is if you're a good actor and you're in Lancaster, you're supposed to milk your fucking resources there in the sense of anybody who goes to LA should be somebody who was already did all the local commercials. They already did all the local business ads. They already whatever to the point where they've been so used in that small town that they can't even get a job because they've already fucking been on 7 billboards for 7 different businesses. So now you have to leave because the town has become too small for you. And so I guess where you can adapt that into a lot of things in your life would just be like, stop looking around and blaming all these things and saying, well, if you were here and if you did this and if this and if that. And the bottom line is there is shit where you're at. Take advantage of it, use it up. And when you've used it up, move on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That's not really something that really applied to me because I never really applied myself to really anything.
Well, neither did I. I'm not going to take that away from you either. I always half-assedly I'm somebody who did a lot of things half-assedly.
Yeah, no, that sums me up. I mean, I was like that in college, the night before. I'm writing my papers to turn in something the next day, and I knew the majority of the shit that I handed in was crap. It just, I just did it just to do it, so that's the one thing about this, the way we started this on a whim, you know, just like, hey, you should do a podcast. And I was more saying that to you because I knew that you already had some things going on with the websites and certain things. And I thought it would be a cool outlet for you. Then you're like, well, when do you want to do it? And I'm like, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We'll figure something out. And then we started doing it, and I got to be honest with you, man. You know, we've talked about it a little bit. The fact that we did it in such a quick amount of time, and it's been a little bit of a struggle. I mean, you know, we've definitely have both struggled with things to talk about. You know, we had our first guest, which went well. Then we had another guest scheduled that we had to kind of put on the back burner because I think when he showed up, he kind of realized, oh man, maybe this isn't as easy as you might think, because it is a little bit, especially for people maybe like you and I, to kind of expose themselves in certain ways. And it's intimidating because people are going to listen to this. You know, people are going to judge you off of things. They're going to judge the way you talk. The YouTubers are going to judge the way your hair fucking looks. You know, they're going to judge you on your opinions about certain topics. So it's a lot. It's a little bit stressful. And
well, the other thing too that I even give ourselves credit for is like, we don't have to put the shit on YouTube. That's not part of what the podcast is, but I actually like to put it on YouTube because I feel like now I'm out there. Like my fucking face is attached to what I'm saying. So I'm fucking committed to what we're doing. You know what I mean? That's what I feel like when I put it there. We don't get much views on YouTube or whatever. We get definitely more downloads on the apps and stuff. But like I 100% like for anyone listening that wants to know this, like it ain't like I'm up here going like, I'm so great. And here's a great story about me because me and Tommy are fucking awesome. I mean, actually, I fucking sit there and I'm like, why am I uploading this? But I fucking do it because I commit it. And it's one of the first things that I'm just 100% fucking committed to. And I really enjoy it. And all of your stupid comments probably wouldn't fucking hinder this anyway. I know I'm not perfect. I know we're not perfect, but I do know that we do it every week or, you know, as much as we can, and we're getting better. And to add to your point, Tom, it's funny because it feels like it's been a lot longer than it actually has been. Because I just looked the other day, and I think our first uploaded podcast was like 628 or something. And I kept sitting there in my head. I'm like, what's it been, like 6 months now? Fuck that. But it's something where like I've never been so committed to something. I'm literally like, how can I turn my entire house into things related to podcasting? Like I don't want to live anywhere. I just want a bedroom and fucking podcasting sets everywhere at this point. Again, going backwards, like if I could talk to my 20-year-old self, I'd say, I know it doesn't exist yet, but there's this thing called podcasting that you're going to love. And the minute it fucking starts to fucking happen, start doing it.
And invest in Apple.
Yeah. Invest in Apple. And by the way, there's this thing. I want you to jot it down. Google. Okay.
It's kind of like Hot Tub
Yeah,
Time
I
Machine.
love that movie. That's a fucking awesome movie.
When he was like Lugal. And he renamed it Lugal, right?
My favorite part of that movie is when he's like, the girl's like, you got like something like meet me at the party or something. He's like, but how will I find you? How will I find you? How can I text you? Can I whatever? How do I find you? She's like, just come find me. You know what I'm talking about or no?
No.
There's a scene. I'm going to explain it. Remember, they're back in time.
Yes.
So they're, I don't know, was it the 80s?
Yeah.
And he's like at this fucking concert and there's a girl kind of like fucking, she's probably high on acid or something. And they're like, she's just like the free spirited love girl, like dancing at the party. And she grabs him and gives him a kiss on his cheek. And she's like, you're so cool. She's like, I can't wait she says like, meet me at this party or something. And he looks at her and he's like, well, what's your phone number? And none of that shit exists. She's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Phone number? And then he's like, but how will I get in touch with you? She's like, just come find me. Like it's the 80s. You know what I mean? Like there is no fucking text. There is no whatever. But you know what I was thinking to ask you? And not that I have any answers really. I'm more interested in your answers. So if you could tell your 20-year-old self a little bit about the future, right? Like, here's what's going to happen, whatever. And don't take this to the extreme because we all know like things like Facebook aren't good. Okay. But I don't think that they're things that should be removed from the world. So if you could tell your 20-year-old self some things to steer clear of that are going to start to happen in the world, what would it be?
That are happening in the world. Wow, that's
Like,
a
no, no,
little.
no, no. What I guess what I'm trying to say is like, see how like Facebook is becoming you know what I mean? There's these things that if you get, you know what I mean? Like Instagram, like in other words, would you tell your kid like, dude, fucking, and if you're creative, start making Instagram videos and da da da.
Right, right.
Like another, I guess what I'm saying is like, technology is a good thing. And a lot of what we like, we're looking at this world where people are wrapped in this technology. We're so I like, because I don't know the answer. I mean, of course, if there was an answer like Facebook's bad, then I would tell my kid I would tell myself to stay away from it. But I'm more asking you because I feel like maybe this is a question you can handle better than me. Would you tell your like, in other words, or would you just say Facebook and all this shit's coming, enjoy yourself and whatever?
No,
Or
no. I think I would probably tell myself to sharpen my wits in a sense that because social media and technology has made our lives so much easier. Like I was talking about the guy at work that can turn on Jeopardy and pretty much answer all the questions. There's so much information that I don't retain because I know it's in my pocket. Like just imagine when we were kids, how many phone numbers you remembered,
yeah.
and now, like I'm almost lost without my phone.
Well, I said to somebody yesterday, actually at work, remember when you were a kid and the teacher would say, don't rely on the calculator
Yeah, yeah,
because it'll become like a horrible thing. Well, what I think about a lot is our phone is way more than a calculator now, and it has replaced a lot of things in our lives. So basically, the same way that relying on the calculator might fucking hinder your ability to do math. Well, now I think it hinders a lot of ability to do a lot of things.
yeah,
Like even me, I was driving around not too long ago, and I'm not that familiar with outside of Baltimore. Like, I mean, if I was in Philly, I know where I am all the time, or maybe I wouldn't have been. Like, there goes an example.
right.
I would know how to get around all these different neighborhoods, even though I'm not from there or wasn't in them a lot. Or even maybe I would know, like, well, just get to Broad Street or whatever. And dude, I was driving around in my fucking car as if I would like, as opposed to my spaceship. I was driving around in my car and, and my fucking phone died and I was in an area I wasn't familiar with. And there were two fucking horrible things that came out about it. I was on just a road that like I knew to go east or west on, and I'm driving far one way, and I'm like, this isn't the way, turning around, driving back. And then I'm like, just fucking ask somebody for directions. And guess what? That's not fucking easy to do anymore either, because it seems like nobody, I'm like, which way do I have to go to get back there? And they're like, you're trying to ask somebody over your window, and they're like fucking trying to look at their phone and shit, same thing as you. And then, nobody wants to stand there with you for fucking 20 minutes. Dude, I was fucking completely lost. Like I was like
Yeah,
lost. And I was
yeah,
only 25 minutes outside of fucking Baltimore.
yeah. I mean, dude, I've never been good with directions. I've always been horrible street names, all that shit. I'm just like, yeah, it's next to the fucking 7-Eleven or by the Walmart,
Yeah.
down there. And so, yeah, man, with all of modern technology, and it's funny that you even asked that, because I mean we've been entrenched now in social media for the past, I don't know, when did Facebook and all pop around, 10 years ago or so, right? I mean, we had MySpace before that.
Well, I'd say even apparently these companies been around for longer, but if you remember when Facebook first started, it was for college kids. And I do remember
Yeah,
there being a Facebook, but I would say like Facebook really didn't become what it is until like 8 or 9 years ago.
I want to say, well, so I obviously MySpace was the place to
Yeah.
go to. And then I remember the first time I was turned on to Facebook was I had broken up with my ex-girlfriend, and she was like, I have our picture together as my picture on Facebook. And I was like, the fuck is Facebook? You know what I mean? So that was around, I'm going to say like '08, somewhere roughly '08 or
Yeah,
'09 maybe.
it took me like, I feel like you were a guy because MySpace, again, we're going back to Tommy being a music guy, and I'm probably wrong,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
MySpace was very like I remember it was like, oh, you get these videos like they
right.
whatever. And I honestly, like, it's weird. Like, I never needed a cell phone. My first real commitment to a cell phone was the first Apple phone, because I just have to have everything fucking Apple does. I love them. I'll blow them, at least back in Steve Jobs' time.
Right.
But before that, I was really that guy where, like, I would get a cell phone and then I would lose it, and then I'm like, and I don't have a cell phone anymore. And then 6 months later, I have a cell phone or something. But the only reason why I'm saying all this is I'm not trying to be like I was a fucking holding out, because I had no real reason behind it. But I would just laugh at it. Like, people be talking about Facebook and Twitter. Like, I had a buddy that was on Twitter, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I tweeted this, and then I met this person." Oh shit! And I'm like, "Dude, I like I didn't care for it at all. I thought it was weird." The funny part is, I fucking started to get into MySpace. Like, I was like, and when I got into MySpace, people had already fucking migrated elsewhere. Then I kind of like somehow ended up on Facebook. My first experience with Facebook was merely because I had been away so long that it was like, I went on Facebook, say in my 30s, like maybe like late 20s or something. And I started to see, friends that I like, all you guys, like, Danab, Mackey, all these different people. And, it was like, oh, cool. A connection to a way to be connected when you're not there anymore.
Right.
You gotta think, I went to Florida, and then even when I came back to Philly, I didn't like go right to associating with everybody. And so there are people I hadn't seen in 10 years, and now you could just go on to this place and fucking be their friend and see what they're doing, and it was kind of interesting. But then at some point you start to get sucked into this world where you're like, how did I get here? How the fuck did I get this deep into this fucking social media shit?
Yeah. And now, roughly 10 years into it, we'll say, roughly, I'm kind of like, I'm wanting to go back to the old ways. Like I just mentioned to you, like, I want to get a cabin in the woods. Like I've always been a city person, whereas like I wanted to be in the city and all. But like now, with everything, with the impact that social media has on people, with the pandemic kind of happening, and you saw like in major cities, like, dude, you're in such close proximity and all that, and with all the fucking riots and different shit, I just kind of want to be away from people. So like it has more, I have more of a desire now to go back to the basics. And like, and
Well,
I have this like strange like desire to like go fucking cut wood, chop fucking
yeah.
logs of wood, and like shit like that. Just like
Well,
shit.
but here's the thing I'll say about that, because I have the same feeling about like I was always a city guy. My dream, I live in my dream right now to a certain extent. I mean, it's not completed, but
Right.
I have exactly what I wanted, which was, I always wanted a row home, but I wanted an old row home. Like, I didn't imagine myself living in like a Southwest Philadelphia row home. I
Right.
wanted like a old city type row home,
Right. Right.
but I also wanted something that was mine. So therefore I didn't want to like just buy like a custom built fucking house. I always wanted to buy something that was mine, and that, everything inside of it was my way. Like, I always just had this thought of like, every apartment I lived in, I'm like, I want to knock that fucking wall down,
Right. Right.
and that's what I did, maybe a little too much, but
Right.
I did it. And the funny part is, now that I got it, now I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't want to, like, well, once I started to also do work on my house and stuff, and what started to happen was, now I envision, now what I would love to have is the house with the property that I could let my dog on my property and go outside and fucking build something, and have my little fucking room, my studio where I can build shit, and then have my studio where I can film shit. And my dream of like being able to open up my door and just be right out in the city, that didn't go away with coronavirus. That went away with just like, as I got older, I just stopped caring about being part of any kind of scene, and then, but then I guess my question for you is, don't you now, I guess you're imagining yourself as like a fucking lumberjack out in the middle of nowhere.
Which is fucked up, because I am not like, I'm not a handy guy. I'm not, so like, I would be fucking really fucking shit up. Like I wouldn't, but
Well,
I think
here's the thing I'll tell you from experience. That kind of shit, and I think it comes from people kind of like making you think. I really think that like we're all meant to work with our fucking hands.
yeah,
Like, and so what I got really upset about is when I took on this project of redoing my house. I mean, granted, I'm sure some people could do a better job, but I never fucking hung a picture on the wall. And I totally did everything in this house. What started to happen is, dude, as long as you're not, I'm sure it sucks if you're getting yelled at by your boss or something, but it's very easy stuff. It's like you build a wall, you put fucking sheetrock on it, even if you fuck it up, you can still fix it, whatever. And I understand now when you see this, when I was little and they had like Tim the Toolman Taylor shit, and he was like,
right,
big power tools, and
right,
you laugh at that. And also he was like an idiot too. Like, I think that was something I always saw was like, don't try this shit unless you're real smart, or something.
right, right.
And the more I started to do it, the more I don't understand why like anyone works for anyone and why they don't just like fucking build their own shit and whatever. There's something about like, yo, you know what? Like I keep thinking about building something I can't wait to do the set for the podcast and stuff. It's like there's some type, like if I was to be like, I'm going to build a table, like I built my own bed, I build my own tables. I've taken like old sewing machines and turned them into shit, and there's something so fucking, it's such a satisfying feeling. And also to take on every project you take on, you go like, I don't know if I could do this. And then when you're done, you're like, not fucking bad. Like not
Right.
bad at all. And when you were saying about like, in the beginning of this, you said about learning how to use a tool or whatever. And I actually think that it would be like, I don't think that I would tell myself like, learn how to use a tool so that you can go into the construction business, but learn how to use a tool. Like as a man, learn how to use a tool. Like
Right.
as a man, you should know how to fucking fix a leak. You should know how to fix something wrong with your electric in your house, or at least know the basis of it and stuff. And not to be manly, what I'm just trying to say is like, I've relied on people my whole life for so many things like that. And I look back now and I'm like, these people were ripoffs. These people were like, you know what I mean? Like I'm thinking about the guy that charged me $1,000 to do X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, I go to Home Depot and I get the same shit for fucking $150 in fucking supplies or something. And I'm like, this fucking guy raped me,
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing that you could call manly, you can call it whatever you want, but just being self-sufficient enough, and just being able to do little things. You don't have to do everything, but it's satisfying.
Well, I guess
I mean? Like,
and then another little thing to add to it is like for like to adapt it to somebody like yourself, right? Like maybe right now in your situation, you don't have to fucking knock down any walls or anything,
right.
But what happens is you start to see how this adapts to levels of creativity. Mm-hmm. So it's like sometimes my girlfriend might be like, oh, I want to make a painting or something, like whatever. I could make her a frame in like fucking 3 seconds now out of like old wood that I found in the fucking trash. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a lot of things you can adapt it to, that if I could go back in time, that's one thing I would tell myself is next time fucking you get the opportunity to fucking help somebody build their garage, do it,
Oh yeah. And I was always against that, man. And now I wish I fucking knew how to fix fucking body work on cars. Because I just had this fucking little, I'm going to go on a little rant here. And this is just everything you were talking about, getting fucked over by people, by paying people to do shit. A couple months ago, I had a bunch of scratches on my car and they were kind of deep. You could put your finger in there. So it was deeper than the clear coat. Took it to the body shop. He's like, it's going to be probably 2 weeks to have your car. We got to repaint this, repaint that. We got to take this off, blah, 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 blah. This big, long fucking project. So this was back in like February, and it was right around the time, like after that, obviously, with COVID hit. So once I found it out, I was like, all right, let me get renter insurance to get a car, because eventually, whenever I turn this in, so this way I have a fucking rental. So the other day I'm in a parking lot. I'm going to the bank. This girl's pulling out, and parking lots are the fucking worst. She's pulling out. She's not paying attention. Her and her fucking high school friend just getting out of the tan salon. She cuts her car too hard, and the front left bumper kind of like scratches against my back passenger side seat, or not seat, back door. So I get out, and it's really not too bad. I kind of start wiping some of it off. It came off. Stopped by the body guy that I initially went to a couple months ago. He threw some cream on there, buffed it out. He's like, dude, I'm not busy. I'm not doing nothing. You can barely tell. And I got a black card, shows everything. Now there's a little teeny bits of paint, but it's at the bottom, and you really can't even tell. Like, you'd have to fucking look at it on a microscope. But those other scratches are still on there, and they're pretty significant. And I don't even know how the fuck I got them. I think it was through a car wash. I don't know. Called the insurance company today. She's like, oh, can you give me a date? Well, first of all, they write up the paperwork to how much it would cost to fix with this girl. So they're like, well, hey, we weren't going to go through insurance companies. We were talking about getting an estimate, and then this way maybe she could just give me cash so we don't have to make a claim. So I'm like, all right, I didn't really know what to expect. Again, he wiped it right the fuck off. It wasn't a big deal. But the other guy's like, maybe you could just get a couple $100 out of her, and then you could put it towards, your deductible for the rest of it. And he comes out with this sheet. It's like $600. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, the girl was nice. She was young. She was just fucking not paying attention. There really is no damage to my car or her car. I'm not beating her the fuck over the head. And one guys were joking. They're like, that's what I would do. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's just not in me. Like, I feel like karma somewhere down the fucking road will help me out, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I called the insurance company today. I'd let that slide. I'm not worried about that girl's money. Called the insurance company today. They're like, well, you don't have renter's insurance. I said, what are you talking about? I got it a couple months ago. It doesn't kick in because the accident happened before I started picking it up. And meanwhile, I picked it up in February, so I've been paying for it till now. So I've been paying for the last several months for absolutely nothing. So I texted my buddy right before we got on here, and I was like, dude, like, I know you were saying it's going to take 2 weeks in the body shop. I can't I got to come out of pocket now for 2 weeks for a rental car. I said, I'm not doing that. And I said, so if you could maybe get it down to like a week, we could talk. But now I got to come out of fucking pocket. Now it's going to cost me over like $1,000 of my deductible, renting this fucking car. Yeah. I'm like, dude, so much for me being a fucking nice guy. Well, now here we go. I can't catch a fucking break.
Well, dude, I mean, I didn't want to talk about this on the podcast. I don't want to put my girlfriend in any whatever, and I don't want any legal issues. But fuck it, I'll say it. But so my girlfriend fucking smashed into the car across the street. Right? It was a horrible day. I fucking had to basically, she came running in the house screaming. So I go outside, look at the other car. I don't really see any damage, but I look at my truck. It's all fucked up in the back. The bumper's fucking off. Everything's fucked. So I get in my car. Because, by the way, she was only going out there because she has fucking OCD. Yeah. And, if my car's not parked in front of my house, she gets fucking OCD. So I just jumped in the fucking car and just fucking, I put it in front of my house. She's fucking screaming on the street. And I'm like, now don't take this the wrong way. It ain't like my brain was going, I don't want to fucking have to pay for anything. But my brain was more like, shut the fuck up. Like, the whole fucking neighborhood doesn't have to know that I just fucking smashed into a car. So I tell her to get in the house. I put it up now. And I was the complete criminal in this operation because, because the thing was I am, and I'll say this too. This is what happens. I've always been the fucking nice guy, and I always get fucked. And I looked at this car, and what I could see is the Honda symbol was a little fucked up. I'm just like, you know what? I don't even know if I did that. I don't even know if she did that. I don't know what the fuck. So I wasn't really fucking caring about that at the moment.
Right.
Because about fucking 15 minutes later, she went into a fucking full-on fucking panic attack, and I had to call the fucking paramedics. So anyway, the fucking paramedics come. I'm fucking putting her in the back of the fuck. She's going to kill me when she fucking listens to this, but that's life. And so basically though, I will say this. This girl was like, fucking, what do we do? Oh my God, what do I do? And I'm like, you don't do anything. Okay. My car's right there, completely smashed up. You announced it to the whole neighborhood. So whatever. But to be honest with you, to be really honest with you, because I'm afraid to go through what you're going through.
Right.
I was like, if these people come out, and I did keep an eye on the fucking car, and I thought, if it's just some asshole that fucking parked in my neighborhood that doesn't fucking live here, and he gets out and fucking there's nothing done to his car, which is a fucked up thing to say, but I'm just being honest. It bit me in the ass, as it always does, because I never do shit like that. And I come outside, and fucking 3 days later, there's a fucking cop behind my car, fucking running my plates. So I come out and I'm like, hey, what's going on, officer? How's life? And he's like, are you Mr. Bender? I'm like, yes, I am, whatever. And then I look across the street. There's two of the most fucking disgruntled looking people I've ever seen in my life just sitting there like fucking staring at me. So I walked right over to them and fucking said, hey, listen, it's been a long fucking ride here, and I apologize. I could have left a note. I could have whatever. I said, but I'm going to be really honest with you. I didn't want to get fucking taken to the cleaners by somebody. I didn't want to go find somebody and say I hit your fucking car because I don't see anything wrong with it. And I didn't want to turn around and be fucking $3,000 in the fucking hole because you take it to some fucking mechanic and he says, hey, well, you could fucking take him to the cleaners.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking in my head, like, there's nothing wrong with your car. Well, they were actually extremely fucking cool about it because I guess maybe I apologize, whatever. But even right now, what I'm dealing with is like there's like, in other words, like I've tried to say to this lady, like, look, just tell me how much you want. Like, I'm even looking at her like there's like, and so basically they put it in my hands like, well, if you can get me a new hood, if you can get me whatever. And like, I'm online and I'm like finding hoods and then I'm sending them to her. And she's like, oh, but that one's not the paint color or whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck do you want? And I can't believe how many times I put in there. I'm like, hey, you can get your car fixed or not, and I'll just give you some money. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I guess what I'm getting at is we all know how this is going to end. At some point, somebody's going to be like, just take it to a mechanic. Fuck that guy. He didn't, whatever. Yeah. And the whole thing is that the way that I even let myself do something that I normally would never do is because I'm not afraid of what they are going to ask of me. But I know once that fucking car gets into a fucking shop and they go, well, your hood doesn't necessarily fully close down and fucking you need a bumper to attach that to that, all for fucking their Honda symbol being a little fucking crooked. And I've been taken to the fucking cleaners too many times on it. Everybody's going to hate me now, this fucking podcast. Like, this guy is a fucking asshole.
He's a fucking shyster.
But I mean, I don't know. It's like one of them things where, and I guess it's another thing too of like, just do the right thing every time because fucking it's coming back around one way or the fucking next. So
yeah, but to be fair, look, you live in a major city. There's fucking bumper to bumper fucking parking. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
Where I live, I'm out in the suburbs, but on my street in particular, it was one street parking. And it was a little bit tight. The last car that I had prior to this was a lease. And I know motherfuckers would bump cars backing up forward and backward and tapping cars all day long. And I had a bunch of little scratches on the front of my front bumper that I know happened here. Nobody left me any notes. I know because that's really the only place that I park like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And there was enough scratches on there that I had to go and get that taken care of at a body shop, and nobody left any fucking notes. They probably didn't even pay attention. So, and it must be those fucking Hondas because this fucking broad hit me. She had a little fucking Honda, not paying attention.
Well, I remember I said to my dad one time something about like he was parking and he like hit both cars he was pulling in, and I was like, Dad, what the fuck? And he goes, it's called a bumper for a reason.
Yeah. You just give it a love tap. That's all. That'll let you know when to stop.
Yeah,
but
oh, a nice butt for both of us. Yeah, I mean, is there like I guess we'll pretty much probably wrap this one up. I mean, I feel like this was a pretty short, sweet, and little different, little simpler. But in all honesty, is there anything else that you could think of that you would like? Let's go back to the realm of it. Like, if you're sitting there with your fucking younger self, like and maybe wrap up some of what we said in a nutshell. But like, what would be the most important thing? Like I mean, I'm asking it, so maybe to more formalize my question, I'll start with it. And I really just think that the main thing I would tell my fucking self is nobody's gonna do anything for you but you, in the sense of to satisfy you. It doesn't mean people are bad. It just means that if you're not showing any effort, nothing's going to come your way of what you want. Oh, yeah. And I guess what I would basically just say is like, fucking follow your true self, follow your dream, whatever that is, big, small, and don't be turned off by the big dream, because if you follow that big dream, wherever you settle in that dream, I'm sure you'll be happy in some way. And your idea of success is big right now, and what it means to be successful to you is so important that you'll dismiss things that don't seem to give you that instant gratification of success, but they're important to where by the time your fucking sense of success starts to kind of fall down into this or settle into this other place that isn't necessarily as big as it once was, hopefully you'll be right up behind it. Maybe you won't be the fucking Steven Spielberg, but I think just being in that world would be satisfying at this point.
Yeah, and I would probably just end that. I would probably tell myself to just take more chances. Fail young and often to develop those mental calluses, because I didn't have enough of those, and now I have more calluses on my hands because I have to work harder now. You know what I mean? Now I'm working 2-3 jobs because I have that work ethic that I should have had when I was younger, but I had a more of like a woe is me attitude when I was younger. I kind of had a misplaced mentality, and I kind of thought that things should just kind of happen for me and not make my own, determine my own future.
So you were a liberal when you were younger.
Yeah, and very, very so, very much so. And now at 40, your back hurts more, your hair turns fucking gray quicker. Not that I'm complaining, because I don't mind working hard, you know what I mean? But like doing that at a younger age really will set you up for success quicker.
Well, as somebody who fucking, like, I worked, man. I always worked. I worked every fucking weekend since fucking 13 years old. You know what I mean? I sacrificed through work. So just to kind of fucking, to clarify something, because I think that you mean this too. Depending on what you want to do, you know what I mean? Like if you want to own a bar, then do it. But what I would say is it's working at something, not just work. If all your fucking friends, because I feel like in my life, what happened was, it was like, even when I fucking went back to school, there were so many opportunities that I missed, because the way I could do school was, it was like, I have 2 days off, but cram everything in these 2 days. And then the amount of opportunities I've missed with like, oh, some professional film guys coming to teach us all lighting if you want to come on Saturday morning. And my brain's like, fuck that, I got to work. So I guess moving into it is like work at something. But also when you said, from something that you said, I took the word sacrifice. So for me, when you were talking about the calluses and shit, whatever you call it, mental calluses or whatever. And it's like, if I could also tell myself something, it would be like sacrifice leads to success. In other words, that comfortable feeling that you get attached to of like my brain would go, I can't fucking take off work because then I'd lose, whatever money or whatever. Look where that's gotten me. I've made great money my whole life, and the fucking coronavirus took all that away from me.
Right.
And so now that I'm looking back, I'm saying I should have just fucking hung out with my friends. And so work is one thing, but it isn't just work. For where the work I've done has gotten me, which was all about money, I would rather just hung out with my fucking friends. Maybe work might mean don't go to your paying job this weekend because you're going to go and do something where you volunteer. But what you'll get from that volunteering will pay you back tenfold than just the extra money you'll make that weekend. So I guess be prepared to sacrifice being comfortable. And that might be with money, not just the physicality of working. Like be prepared to fucking put in hard work that doesn't necessarily give you instantaneous gratification, whether that be financially or not, because sometimes that's what it takes to get to where you want to go. And life doesn't end at 30 like we all used to think when we were 20. You got to really think in your head, like, I might live to be 85 years old. So if I would have thought at age 20, what do I have to do to make my life better? Not now, not when I'm 30, not when whatever, but you need to think like, I need to make sure that I can have a good life my whole life. So therefore, if you're not taking care of yourself, you don't want to be fucking 50 years old and have to live 30 horrible fucking years. Think bigger, on a bigger scale of what your life is and what your idea of success is, and understand that being rich and being famous and being whatever is not the culmination of success. There's a lot more to it.
Right, right. And I was
And
actually
don't
just
masturbate so much because it's only going to get worse. No?
yeah, and I mean it depends on who listening to. I don't know. Marcy, our last guest, she might disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
But
I guess it depends how you masturbate.
But there was a great quote that I heard during a Jim Carrey speech that I maybe just ended out with when he said he at a commencement speech, and he said you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance at doing what you love.
100% true.
So on that note,
Yeah.
we're just gonna keep doing what we love and see where it gets us. Maybe by the time we're 50, we'll have a fucking beautiful podcasting.
Yeah, and maybe you guys could give us some instant gratification by liking and subscribing.
Yes, yes. Like, subscribe, follow, comment, tell your friends. You know,
Tell your friends about these two idiots that make zero sense that you listen to.
One day we talk about ass eating, and the next day we're talking about, we're getting all philosophical and shit.
We talk about ass eating, and the next one we talk about taking care of your ass.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
All right, guys.
Masturbate.